It's an honor to be here today. I want to thank Bentley and the jurors for giving us this opportunity. My name is Ted Weitzman. I work for the Southern Company. We're a large power utility in the southeastern United States. We service about 4.5 million customers with over 40,000 megawatts of generation. Today I'm going to present to you our continued return on investment by deploying the EB Data Quality Manager. And I'm going to start with something, again, this is a continuation project. We presented some qualities last year, and we've been in production for about 1.5 years with EB Data Quality Manager. And I want to say what we've been doing over the past year to really leverage value out of the system. I'm very honored actually to be here to correct something that I didn't have an opportunity to do last year, and that's my general concept of our goal, which is to take data, process it. If I look like this, I'm trying to operate the animations here. Process it, normalize it, qualify it, and turn data into information. And of course, leveraging that information to get value and creating knowledge. Now, if I had to do it again last year, this is what I'd say. Managing data and assets in any cradle-to-grave environment feels like this. There we go. Chaos. And that's what we felt for 6 years before going into production with the EB Data Quality Manager. And of course, we deployed the EB Data Quality Manager to help us put some order to that chaos, rein it in. And there are three main principles embedded in the tool that we use to do that. And I'm going to talk about each of those independently. Data Quality Manager, which is a module actually in the EB Data Quality Manager, the Management of Change module, and of course the inherent flexible architecture of the database. Now, I'm going to talk about these generally. Last year I broke them down one by one and went through how each one sort of adds value. But this year, diving a little deeper into the weeds as it is, these are three general concepts that fuel the aspects of the product that I'm about to demonstrate. So last year I talked a lot about two distinct deliverables, one of them being drawings. And drawings is one of the things that we did have a handle on, and we were able to rein in that chaos many years ago. We used the EB, or the Bentley ProjectWise Explorer tool to manage in-process design drawings. We have a robust set of procedures and tools to help us manage those through a process of approval, and then we put renditions or documents of record into a document management system where they are distributed. And last year I went into some detail about how we put a similar system in place using the EB Data Quality Manager to get a handle on data. Now, what we ended up creating were two distinct environments. A drawing-centric environment that had its own iterative design process of review and approval. And then we also put in-house in our environment a data-centric environment. Now the problem is that these are correlated but disparate, or they were up until this year. This was not our goal, to have two distinct deliverables. Our goal is to have one deliverable, and that is a design, and whatever a design requires. So what we knew we needed to do this year was merge the drawing and data environment to create a design-centric environment. And the way we did this was using the existing tools. And this is what it looks like today, an integrated merged environment where data and drawings live together and go through a simultaneous review process. And I'm going to detail how we use the tools to do that. What we do is we have our design group using two source systems, really, the Bentley Plant system and the Signa PDMS system. The Bentley Plant tool is there mainly for 2D, 3D graphic integration with data around mechanical and INC processes, and we use the Signa PDMS system for circuit routing and circuit information with no graphical element to that system. It's a pure database. So the design group and the designers, engineers, use those systems, they input data, they update drawings. Of course, the data is updated in the EB Data Quality Manager, and then the drawings go through a review process. What we did is we created a tool in the ProjectWise Explorer tool where an engineer designer can select an individual drawing, click on a button, and get, and I'm going to use a word that Greg used this morning, an integrity report regarding the assets that are on that drawing, querying the qualified data in the EB Data Quality Manager, as opposed to the in-process drawing that exists, or the in-process data that exists in the source databases. So that report is generated through a web browser for immediate review and consumption by the engineer designer. Based on the information on that report or on the drawing itself, the graphical content, the engineer designer can make changes, updates to the graphical content, and or the databases. When a certain life cycle or maturity has been met for the graphical content and the data, the designer engineer can, in the ProjectWise Explorer tool, generate a package of drawings. And this is where we've proceduralized the process, and the EB Data Quality Manager becomes an integral part of our process and procedure. Once that package is generated, in the past, that package of drawings just went straight to a reviewer for approval and load of drawings into the document management system. Now, that package makes a pit stop, as it were, on the way to the approver. It gets an integrity report, a data quality health report from the EB Data Quality Manager to go to the approver with the graphical content that's represented on the drawings. So the reviewer not only gets the drawing, but also the data that fuels or should fuel the design behind that drawing. And of course, based on the content of either the graphics or the data on the report, they can reject or approve that package. And of course, if they reject it, information regarding the rejection goes immediately back to the designer engineer. They can review the graphical content, the data content, make corrections, updates to the source systems, either the graphics or the data, regenerate the package. I wish the computer was right here, folks, sorry. Regenerate the package, regenerate the report, send it for approval, and this time, if approved, or however many iterations it takes, the drawings will be distributed in the document management system for distribution, and the data quality health should represent or reflect the approved content or approved data for any of the assets that appear on those drawings. All right. That's a domestic or an in-house design process and procedure. What I hope to see is an expansion of that to solve one of our current problems as an owner-operator, and here I speak as an owner-operator, responsible for information as it relates to our facilities and having that information for operations and maintenance. We all deal with these external partners, including our design organization. Of course, the facility views everything as an external partner. In the past, currently actually, in some cases, for some projects, dealing with that external partner can be a challenge, because typically they are contractually required to produce a certain amount of information as it relates to their design, usually in the form of a drawing. Sometimes you're able to get them to package up data, produce it, and deliver it. And I represent that sort of as a bucket, and I usually refer to it as a bucket of dirty mop water, or at least that's how I view it, because I have no idea, especially data-wise, data quality-wise, what is being produced by our external partner when it's handed over to operations and maintenance. In many cases, there's no data at all. The owner-operator, the facility itself, when they need information for operations and maintenance, typically they have to scrape information off of drawings for assets, even just tagging. They don't receive comprehensive lists. And when it comes to the engineering data, they might be able to find a spreadsheet. They might be able to squeeze something out of the external partner to help them line up the engineering data to the asset, but we really have no idea. And typically when I've spoken about data, even internally with Southern Company, often I hear, we'll just wait till the end of the project. We'll just wait till the end of the project. Well, what I've seen, experience tells me, is that you're not going to get anything at the end of the project because resources are very thin. And what you do get, if you do get anything, you cannot ensure quality whatsoever. Or it's difficult to ensure quality, or requires a tremendous amount of manpower. So what we've done is, and of course that bucket is handed over usually to operations and maintenance to deal with, all right? What we've done is deployed the EB Data Quality Manager and using our internal design group to manage information related to designs from our external partners. And basically what this creates is a transparency to the facility of the design, because they don't care where it originates, whether it's in-house, whether it's an external design. What we've done, because Southern Company has a robust engineering construction services group, basically an EPC, we employ our design group to either contractually require, and that's the best case scenario, contractually require data to come from an external partner, or if that is not producible by that external partner, our design group is actually responsible for producing it for the facility. And all of that data flows through the EB Data Quality Manager as if it were domestic design. What I say this creates is a pool, a chlorinated pool, one that I feel comfortable with my kids swimming in, of information to share for the facility. I think that makes sense. I don't want to hand my kid a bucket of water and say drink it. If they drink a little pool water, I'm okay with that. But anyway, we've got a good quality set of data. Now, how do we leverage it? And this is where I'm going to talk really specifically about the reference data library and the way that it allows us to relate objects within the database. What I have here, and I talked a little bit about this last year, was the flexibility of the reference data library and how we're able to change it in production and how flexible it is. But what I've described here is a very simple system, right? A process line, a pump, a motor, a cable connecting the motor to a motor control center. Now we're able to put those objects, of course, in our reference data library and create the ontology, the relationships between those objects. Now that we have comprehensive asset lists in the EB Data Quality Manager, we can look at a downstream partner. In this case, I'm going to pick on startup and commissioning because that was a known pain point that we had in the way that our startup and commissioning group collected asset lists from internal and external partners and related assets to turnover packages for operations and maintenance, right? This was a very manual process. It usually involved them reviewing oodles of P&ID documents, scraping off asset information off the P&ID document. That's internal. External, they'd have to deal with those external partner P&IDs. And this was a cumbersome, a very labor-intensive process for the startup commissioning group. Now, procedurally, we can require, or the EB Data Quality Manager is required procedurally to have the comprehensive asset list as it relates to a project. And we can pass those asset lists to the startup commissioning group, and they trust its integrity because of the data quality reviews that we're able to put the internal and external partner information through. Once they're past that information, they still have to do some legwork, but we can assist them. They can assign specific assets to turnover packages through a review process, but because of the ontology present in the system, we can automate the assignment of many objects and many assets to packages based on the relationships. In this case, we have a pump that's connected to a motor that's on our process line. If you assign the pump to a package, we have a set of rules that says, well, in this case, for this type of system, you can automatically apply the same turnover code to the process line that they'll need to put in their package, and also the motor. And of course, there'll be other objects here. This is a very simple depiction of a system. Now, a challenge comes in with our circuit, and this is typical of our environment. You'll have in one system and receiving power from a piece of equipment in another system. And there are many scenarios here that we have to deal with, but we've been able to create automations that allow us to make that circuit assignment as an automation as well. Now, once all these assignments are made by the startup commissioning group in their package builder, which is a proprietary tool they use, we're able to feed those assignments back into the EB Data Quality Manager, adding to the greater pool of information. Of course, we can put some quality review on those packages as well and some iterative process for the startup commissioning group. Once we have that package information in the EB Data Quality Manager, of course, we can distribute it to other organizations. This time we're going back upstream to the electrical design group, who's receiving those circuit assignments into the Signa PDMS circuit routing system. And the reason we do that in our environment is that circuit routing system, that Signa PDMS, is a system that's used by our construction organization. And our construction organization, when it comes to circuits, is pretty married to the startup commissioning group in the way that they build their sequences. So they use that Signa PDMS system basically to issue pull cards and termination cards within any given project. Now, that used to be a very manually intensive process by our electrical group. The startup commissioning group didn't have the expertise knowledge of the Signa PDMS system. They usually relied on the electrical group to make these circuit assignments in the Signa PDMS system. And what the electrical group would receive is a set of P&IDs, right, with bubbles around them that showed equipment. And then they had to infer which cables were assigned to that equipment and then guess, because they didn't really know the logic behind a lot of it, they had to guess which package to assign circuits to based on the information they were provided. It was a very clunky, cumbersome process. And what I want to talk about is the return on investment that we have in implementing the data quality review and the reference data library, and of course being able to manage all of that asset information through a change module. Now, I introduced this project last year. It's our Plant Ratcliffe integrated gasification combined cycle plant in Kemper County, Mississippi. This is a $2+ billion investment, and this is 21st century clean coal. It will be the cleanest coal-fired facility in the United States once it's commissioned in 2014. Now, last year, I demonstrated some metrics. And these were the numbers that I gave last year. We had approximately 106,000 quote-unquote objects, many of these assets. Actually, I consider all of these assets, including the documents, because I consider an asset anything that you can receive value from, whether it's a rotating asset in the field, whether it's material, whether it's a document, whether it's a process line, and all of its related engineering information. I consider all those assets. Now, I said last year that this number would double and then triple by project end. and it has more than doubled since last November. Currently, we have 237,000 some odd objects in the system for Kemper County alone. I'm going to go back and talk about a return on investment, and the number that's going to be important is $4 million for approximately 45 people over a 2-year construction cycle, mostly in that startup and commissioning group. And I'm going to break it down like this. That startup commissioning group is going to be responsible for touching approximately 150,000 assets of these objects, 150,000 of them. They don't usually assign physical objects, physical pipe to packages. It's mostly rotating equipment, process lines, things like that. It's going to be by project end, 300,000 plus objects, and 150,000 of those would be considered assets by the startup commissioning group. That's approximately a 45-person team for this project working over 2 years. That works to about 137,000 work hours. I'm going to break that down to minutes because minutes are important to me. That's 11.2 million minutes approximately. All right, and the reason I say it's 11.2 million minutes is because if they're going to touch 150,000 assets, that means they're going to be spending approximately 75 minutes per asset. All right. What if we can reduce that? And we have reduced that by a minimum of 20% by employing the techniques I just described. That's taking the time down from 75 minutes to 60 minutes per asset on average. All right. We have realized that. That's approximately 37,000 man hours saved by that process I described alone. Now, this project employs 2,000 people per se at its peak. Most of those in construction. I haven't even talked about construction really, just the startup commissioning piece. That's $3.75 million saved in that process using these techniques. I'm going to cover the $250,000 gap. The 250,000 that I left out is in the electrical design time that they used to have to spend assigning every circuit to a package in that Cigna PDMS system. And the assumption there is that let's lowball it and say they spent 6 minutes per circuit. Okay? 6 minutes, that's $10 to the company on average. All right. There are an estimated 25,000 circuits by the time the Kemper County project is complete. 25,000 circuits, $10 a circuit, 6 minutes a circuit, $250,000. Okay. And again, these are lowball numbers. I haven't even talked about where we're using these same lists to feed our work order management system. Actually, the commissioning, the maintenance people on site are using the EB Data Quality Manager asset list to feed locations into Maximo. All right. We're also deploying an RFID project that will be used on future environmental projects. The good news is that we're now in brownfield territory as well. Kemper County is obviously greenfield ground up facility. We started pushing data into EB Data Quality Manager for our second project for a scrubber project. I can't go into the details because they haven't been made public yet. But EB Data Quality Manager is being used on a scrubber project currently, and I can hopefully give some more details in the coming months. And by year end, we will have turned EB Data Quality Manager on for 3 baghouse projects. These are basically vacuum cleaners for mercury. Now, the baghouse project and the scrubber projects are large capital projects, hundreds of millions of dollars spent on those projects, and we can see the same kind of return on these projects, scaled, of course, as we're seeing on the Kemper County project. With that, I'd like to say thank you and acknowledge some folks both at Bentley and with Southern Company who have made all of this possible. I want to thank you for your time and open up the floor for any questions.
Thank you. So who wants the first question? Any of our jurors? So I'll ask a question.
Sure.
The example was limited to just a part of your process, right? Mm-hmm. You're mostly around the commissioning and so forth. Are you applying the same methodologies and tools? How far through the process are you applying the same methodologies and tools?
Right, and that's an ongoing process. It's a very interesting part of the implementation. We knew that we had to get the EB Data Quality Manager up and running for the Kemper County project because of its scale, its schedule, its dollars. There are a lot of reasons why we knew we were going to need a comprehensive asset management system in place. One of the pain points we knew there would need to be help was with that startup commissioning group. But as we've proven return on investment, as we're proving the quality of the data that we've been collecting since April of last year, other organizations are engaging us. What we're being engaged with right now is helping construction with pipe spooling. And whether or not there's an EB data quality management solution there, I think there is, and I think we will have it in production within a year. But certainly for those other 4 projects that I mentioned, the Baghouse project and the Scrubber projects, those projects will incorporate more materials management than, let's say, rotating asset management, where we will deploy EB Data Quality Manager to manage structure, steel. We will use it to help manage pipe spooling and materials. So how much of it we can get on the ground for Kemper County is still a question, but I'm confident we can, and it will probably happen within the next 3 or 4 months, but I can't report on it now. But for those future capital projects, it's just sort of a snowball. As we get moving, other organizations find out that we're leveraging data, and they want to know how we can leverage the data for them. And that includes construction and procurement and operations and maintenance. Yes, I'm sorry, yes.
This is on capital projects. You're not going backwards to the existing power gen, your chlorinated pool. Right, yeah. I'm sure there's people in current operating that would love a chlorinated pool.
Yeah, they would, and I cut my teeth in electrical retrofits, where in power generation, most of your retrofit is within the electrical group, and that's where I grew up. And what I can tell you about the configuration of the EB Data Quality Manager is it's project agnostic, right? It's just convincing upper management that we can deploy this kind of return on investment on smaller projects. And we have a business case in place that will allow us to use limited resources to go in and work on collecting data for assets and systems that acquire a large number of work orders. And I'm just waiting to turn that on. And I'm waiting to say, hey, we've vetted this in capital project, we've vetted it in environmental, there is no obstacle to deploying on small retrofit work. What are we doing? Let's go. So, yeah.
I think the term holistic design was used a few times. In looking at this, and you're able to quantify a lot of the operational stuff here in terms and obviously quantify it in terms of savings and everything. Now, from a holistic point of view and going backwards to design, how much of this can you start to quantify going back to design so that you actually look to optimize future designs, brownfield improvements, et cetera, and so on and so forth? I mean, that's part of the process, I expect. Right?
There's a couple of corollaries, I think, related to that question. The first one I want to talk about is immediate value to the design group as the furthest upstream user of the EB Data Quality Manager. And most of the ROI is seen downstream. The big dollars are really in construction, right? So how do you convince the design group that, hey, you need to deploy? And the one thing that I lean back on heavily is, how do you ensure the quality of your design without having some sort of data quality review? And that is where we've gotten traction within the design group. They're going to be spending the same amount of time in those design systems. They know the kind of information they're supposed to be collecting that will ensure quality design, right? And ensure that they don't have to do as much of that rework that's discovered on site because of the lack of quality. That's where the design group finds value. Let's check it now. Let's not have startup commissioning as sort of the really first recipient of a comprehensive asset list. They're usually ones that do the first review, which is kind of interesting. Let's do it in design before it gets to that point, because we have more resources to deal with it if we're doing the quality checks with the drawing review process. That's one part of your question that I can address, is with this project, how are we valuing the design process. The other thing is dealing with, let's say, a reference plant. Can you build a reference plant set of data, let's say for a combined cycle plant, where this is a typical set of design information for a combined cycle reference plant or an IGCC plant. And we don't have a comprehensive set. By the time Kemper County's done, we will have a baseline comprehensive set of data for an IGCC. And hopefully, if we build more of those, we can rely on that reference set of data moving forward, which is another part of the question I think you were asking. And it's definitely in our holistic approach, is being able to create those entire reference sets of data for facilities or systems.
Hi, I've been involved in many commissioning activities, but in the oil and gas industry. And I know the value of getting the quality information, and EB Data Manager is a great tool to do it. But and you've identified most of your savings in that startup and commissioning group, which I perfectly understand, even more in construction. So what tool did you use for that big paper chase within the commissioning activity? Did you build anything on top of EB? 'Cause
Yeah.
EB, you know.
And you've got to, it's very hard, especially this presentation was harder than last year because I dived a little deeper into the weeds, and they are weeds, right? And you got to kind of determine what you can present in a timely manner. There are a lot of moving pieces to that iterative process of assigning assets to codes, and one of the element is the package builder. That was a system that was built, I want to say 3 or 4 years ago, by the startup and commissioning group to help them manage the process on a large environmental project where they were dealing with a lot of external partners and trying to gather information. And an entrepreneurial startup commissioning person built a system that they said, well, we're going to use that going forward. And what I did was work very closely with that Kemper County, that Plant Ratcliffe team, and okay, how do we leverage that tool with the EB Data Quality Manager and generate the kind of information you need for that tool? So it's a very collaborative process, and I want to say we started it full on in February of this year, and by April we had the systems working in a way that's producing this value. And the other thing I want to mention is that we've done it all in-house, both the EB Data Quality Manager, Purview and configuration management, and that other product that was built in-house without any external money. So,
okay, interesting. Thank you very
does
much
that help?
indeed. Thank you.
Any others while I'm in the back?
Ted, you talked about your dirty water. Can you compel your suppliers to play the game a bit? Have you thought about ways you can force them?
Actually, it's very interesting. We're not a typical owner-operator. We have this large EPC arm, this Engineering Construction Services group, of which I'm a part. So we have a pretty good idea of what's happening in an EPC. And if we're dealing with a large EPC as one of those external partners, we've got a lot of internal knowledge that says, hey, we kind of know how you're doing design. We know what should be available. We're not sure you're doing the data quality checks we want to require, but can you provide a baseline of information? And what we've found, especially for the larger partners, is even outside of contract, they're able to provide information, right? Now we're at the point where we're contractually requiring it. And there will be a time in the very near future where we will deal with an external partner, and that's going to be an outsourced partner, a vendor, a fabricator, anybody that we're dealing with externally. Well, we'll say, well, we're going to require contractually this kind of information at this level of accuracy. Can you provide it? And when those folks start saying no, we're going to go to another provider. We're this close to making it happen. We've already internally made the contractual requirements. Now it's just making them fulfill.
Quick question on the Maximo. So you're flowing from EB data quality to Maximo. Are you just putting in asset hierarchy? Or are you putting in bill of materials? Are you putting in failure codes? What are you actually putting in?
Right now, and this is sort of the process of discovery, right? I find out sort of secondhand how things are being used downstream, right? And then once I find out it's being used, it's like, oh, well, how can we step in and streamline the process? Right now, they're loading hierarchies. But for those capital projects moving forward, I'm not sure how much in the Kemper County world we're going to be able to help right now outside of letting them build those hierarchies based on the asset lists. But moving forward, you know, these two large elements of Maximo that we're deploying, right, for procurement and then for work order maintenance, we're this close to bridging the gap, and the gap will be bridged, right, for those next projects. You know, it's sort of like I said, in process. So that is right now, within the past month, been one of those things that I used to be a long-term goal. Now it's very short, and I'm very excited about that.
Well, great. Thank you very much.
Excellent. Thank you.